This is a 102.7 FM Toowoomba Original Podcast.
Welcome everybody to my podcast, Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I love to talk, but I also love to listen. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the episode. Today I have a guest with me who I would never on paper have said that he was going to be my friend. He was born in the year that I finished high school. He's a lad. He knows a lot about sport. What's worse, he doesn't drink. He doesn't have any children. And he knows lots about sport. So can I introduce you? His name is James O'Shea. And my program, James, is called?
Little Big Small Talk.
Little Big Small Talk.
I got it right.
Big Little Small Talk.
Oh, I got it wrong.
So my guest today on Big Little Small Talk is James O'Shea. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Megan. That's a nice intro. I didn't actually realise that I was born the year you finished school. Is that right?
It
82.
is, yeah. So as an unlikely friendship that it is, it works. So I think, James, you're quite a shapeshifter. You do get on with lots of people. I mean, it's to your credit. You can sort of manage to find something in common with everyone you meet, it seems. I want to ask you about where you come from, your family of origin, and that's your mum, Cecile, and your father, Pat O'Shea. Now, your father is quite famously someone who was in the media here for 44 years and died quite young at 64. Tell me about your father, Pat.
Yeah, that's a good way to start. So we lost Dad almost 10 years ago in a couple of weeks, actually, from when we were recording this. And so he obviously is, as you sort of mentioned, everyone knew who Dad was. So I grew up in a family where everywhere I went with Dad, and everybody knew who he was. And that used to intrigue me, obviously. I'd be like, people say, "Good day, Pat, how you going?" And then you'd have a yarn to him and they'd say, "Who was that?" And most times he'd say, "I don't know." Because people, it's one of those things where I think people felt like they knew him even if they didn't, because it was in a time without all social media and stuff like this. So when you listen to him on the radio every morning, saw him on TV every night, and listen to all the races on the weekend or the football or whatever it may be. So, a lot of people sort of knew him. So, but for me, none of that really mattered. He was just Dad. Like, he's my biggest inspiration in anything that I do. He's who I strive to be a very small portion like. And I say a small portion like because I can never be who he was. And the old sound cliche, if I could be 10% of who he was, I'd be pretty happy. So, yeah, he's everything to me. Everything I know, everything I want to know, I learned from him. And when he passed, I sat at his funeral, something I still really remember and it's very true. Like I was doing that story I said to you before, where people would say to me, "Oh, are you Pat's son? You're Pat's son, you're Pat's son." And I got that my whole life. And I used to joke with him, one day people are going to say, "You're James's father." That's just as a kid, And I'm glad that never happened. I'll always be Pat's son, and that's the way it will always be. So I'm, forever grateful for him. And obviously, Mum, I'm really lucky with Mum and Dad. But to answer your question, you asked me about Dad. Yeah, he was just someone that everyone seemed to like. He was someone that everyone seemed to get along with. He was someone that everyone seemed to know, even to this day. People say to me, "Oh, I remember your father," and and all in different walks of life. Your dad did this, or we've got cassettes at home of your dad calling this, and all of that sort of stuff. So it's kind of like that thing of where people felt like they knew him, even if they didn't. And he had that sort of personality with anyone that he came across. I could never be like that, but he's someone I'd miss every day and think about every day, but someone that inspires me every day.
I want to talk to you about Cec a little bit later on because, as you said, she's from the Philippines, and that in itself is an interesting back. So where did Pat grow up? Was he from Toowoomba?
Yeah, so grew up in Toowoomba. So the background of the family obviously is, hence the name O'Shea, is of Irish descent. So Dad's parents or grandparents obviously that's from the Irish side of it. So Dad's parents and my grandparents grew up in Toowoomba. So Dad spent his whole life in Toowoomba, very similar to me, went to Holy Name, went to St. Mary's, and then, worked here his whole life, and actually, and loved Toowoomba. Like, that's sort of why he stayed here his whole life, raised a family here and all the rest of it like that. But whole family is from Toowoomba, and we actually lived with my grandfather when we were very young. We lost my grandmum, so Dad's mum, when I was 10 years of age or something, roughly around there. And then our family actually moved into 91 Jellicoe Street. You can say it next, we don't live there, for near 91 Jellicoe Street, which is where my grandparents lived. And then, so to continue on, I suppose, then once mum and dad moved out, my wife and I moved in there as well. So they grew up here in Toowoomba forever.
What did your father do when he first left school?
So he left school, and I think he always had this passion around race calling and stuff like that. But he worked for what was termed then Social Security, so which is like, what's that now, like Centrelink or I don't know,
Services Australia.
Services Australia, whatever that. So yeah, so he did that, and then he always had this passion. He always say that he had a passion for horses because horses were never a part of my grandparents' life or anything like that. Dad just was fascinated by horses, and then worked his way through, obviously through radio and then race calling and football calling and you name it, all of those sort of things. But yeah, started out working at Social Security.
And was he interested in horses in that he would go to the races, or he would train the horses, or he was betting, or all of the above?
No, I think he was fascinated by the animal, the horse. So he used to tell a story that as kids, like a lot of people in that era, they didn't grow up with much. And they go on a holiday to Sandgate, and he would hear the horses galloping on the sand. And I always remember that sound. So that's what actually, he fell in love with horses, like just seeing horses gallop on the sand at Sandgate. And then, then he just developed a passion and a love for them. And he played sport all his younger life, coached football from a young age, sort of, that's one of the other real passions that he had. But so it wasn't, he just had a love for the horses, and that's sort of something that sort of followed through and led into race calling and the rest of it.
Was he an unlikely celebrity? Like I just want to read you this quote, and this was it was in the Courier Mail, I think after the time that Pat had died, and this is Rod Craddock, and he said, "Every country town needs a Pat O'Shea. He wouldn't have an enemy in the world. He wasn't one for pomp and pageantry. He was the people's champion and everyone's best friend." Was he an unlikely celebrity?
Very much so. Absolutely, 100%. He was quite a simple person, and he had no airs or graces about him in terms of his local celebrity status. That was not him. That didn't drive him. He had no ego around that. He was actually quite a quiet person, despite the fact he's obviously a big personality in terms of what he did that people saw on TV, but he actually was quite a quiet sort of person, and it was just what he did for his work. He loved his family. Many people, which is ironic now, you mentioned in the intro that I don't drink, like he loved to have a beer, and so many people would have had a beer with him across different stages at different places across the time. But he was the most unlikely celebrity that you would ever find, because if you said to him, "Oh, you're a local celebrity," he would hate that actually. Like, he didn't actually like attention, or he won a lot of different awards, and I probably couldn't tell you a lot of them because he didn't, he wasn't into that sort of thing. Like, we didn't even keep things, oh yeah, this and that or whatever else he won, but those sort of things didn't mean anything to him. Like, he didn't keep any, like, there's no sort of worldly possessions in terms of he was sentimental about family, but he wasn't sentimental about his job or what he did. Like, so he wouldn't be able to, he didn't have clips of his, when he was coaching or calling rugby league or races or anything like that, many of the different awards that he won. So it's a really good quote from Robert Craddock, who is also from Toowoomba. And that's pretty well summed up actually.
Was your father, tell me about how he kind of made that transition from being a race caller out at the races to sort of being on TV, like, and how did he kind of handle that, like having his makeup done and all of that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. People never sort of believe how casual and laid back he was with that. So here's a guy that was on radio every morning from 6 a.m. or whatever it was through till sort of 9, 10 o'clock. Then you'll get to the weekends, and if say a midweek, say there was Clifford Park, there was trials, you'd get out and call the trials. And then if there was a meeting at Dalby, you call the races at Dalby. If there was trots on a Thursday, you'd call them out at Clifford Park, and then it'd be on the TV, every night at 6 o'clock. And then on the weekend, he'd be doing racing radio in the morning from sort of 6 o'clock, and then he'd get home about lunchtime, and then he'd go and call the races at night, and he'd get up in the morning and do radio again, and then he'd go and call football in the afternoon. So there was a lot of things there. And people will tell you, I've had different people tell me stories of, because everyone sort of seemed to know where we live. So 91 Jellicoe Street was down the road from the Win TV studios. And some people would drive past, and here's Pat in the front lawn of Jellicoe Street mowing the lawn at about 5:40.
And like, spare 5 minutes.
Isn't he on air? And then he'd rush up there, and then get makeup. And you can ask anyone who was involved with him at Win, he was the most casual person in the world because he'd be on air. We were live those days, so sport would come on about 6:20 or something like that. He wouldn't walk in before 6:17, I reckon. Like I knew people would start and they'd be really worried. Where's Pat? And some of the older guys say, "Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. He'll be here, even if it's like a minute before." He just was really nonchalant.
And was he
Too much.
one of those ones that, you hear about radio, about TV people not having their trousers on,
Yeah.
they've just got a pair of shorts on, but
Definitely.
the feet down the top?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Well, you only see from the desk above. So, yeah, so he'd have shirt, tie, jacket, and shorts.
And was your father, how much of the sort of discipline did he did? He sounds like he was pretty busy and that your mother might have been looking after your kids a fair bit. How much do you remember him doing any disciplining or even going on holidays? Like, could you go on holidays with?
Yeah, it's one of those things. So, discipline-wise, he's the one I was scared of. We were all, myself, Kate, Karen, so he's the one we were, wait till your father gets home sort of thing, things like that. I was always, you were fearful of that. I mean, I'm not saying he was this super strict and we were, but I mean, there was expectations of us around manners, how we spoke, how we conducted ourselves. Obviously, we helped her home with mum, all that sorts of things. And just, he was pretty big on that and he was pretty strict on those sort of things. And they laid the foundations, what I believe, as to why I am the way I am today. And I'm forever thankful for that. But so no, he was pretty strict. But the weird part about it is, he was so busy, but he still didn't, if I was playing football as a kid, he was there. If I was cricket, he'd find a way to be there. I was playing basketball on Friday night, he'd find a way to be there. Something at school, coach my school football team. So at Holy Name. So he was the football coach that we had there. And we used to go on holidays, but we would often be traveling back on a Saturday if he had to call the races. So he might get time off from the TV or radio or something. But if there's a race meeting, we'd be down at Cabarita Beach or something and he'd travel back, call the races and come back, stuff like that. So we had a lot of really good family holidays like that. And as you then become an adult, I look back and think, how mum and dad, like I know how much it costs now and I know things have increased, but thinking like for mum and dad and 3 kids to go, we used to go to Gold Coast or somewhere for like 2 weeks sometimes. So we're pretty lucky. And I know we never missed out on anything.
And was religion a very big part of his life?
Yeah, it was a massive part of Dad's life. He was very strong Catholic. We grew up, as I said, at 91 Jellicoe Street. St. Teresa's Church was across the road. So literally across the road. So we'd walk out our front door 5 steps and we're into church. Incredibly, we were never on time, but that's another trait of Dad. As I said, he cut it pretty fine. So, but he's very, very strong and staunch Catholic. Like he would go to St. Pat's Cathedral every day. He would go to church every Sunday. This probably sums up. There's a story at his passing that sits with me forever. So, not to go through the whole details of it, but when Dad was quite sick towards the end, but we didn't know how sick he actually was, and he had to go, basically, if you don't know, long story short, Dad had to bowel surgery because they said he had cancer of the bowel, and then they're going to remove the tumor on the bowel, and then, if it was just confined to that area, it would have been okay. If it wasn't, and if it had spread further, we had further issues. But anyway, so he was going in to have that surgery, say on the Monday. I remember speaking to him quite a lot, and he kept saying some words, which was, "Thy will be done." So if I ever got a tattoo, they're the words I'd get, "Thy will be done." So he kept saying, let's say, because I was very positive and never to my mind or any of our minds was like, this is the end, I just said, oh, well, you'll be right. We'll go through this and then whatever happens after that. And he kept saying, oh, well, thy will be done. I said, and if I'm, I'd love, if my time's up, thy will be done. He just kept saying, thy will be done, to the point that I said, stop saying that. Can you please stop saying that? And he said, I've lived a life of seeing you 3 kids grow up to be really proud of who you guys are as adults. So that's the main job we have here on earth, is to see you kids grow up and be able to create your own lives, etc., etc. Done that, I'd love a bit more time with you guys and your mum. But if God's saying now is my time, I'm saying I'm ready. Thy will be done. So he had that really strong faith. So he kept saying that before it. So I'll never forget those words, because as I said, it's like, if I ever got a tattoo, that'd be those words.
Yeah, don't get a tattoo.
No,
I think you can remember.
Actually, I won't.
Promise me. I'm on Pat's team. Well, I'm Megan O'Hara Sullivan. We're on Big Little Small Talk, and we're talking to James O'Shea. He's recounting stories of his lovely father, Pat. Pat died of bowel cancer, as you said. I was interested to read that he had an amputation due to his diabetes. What was that?
Yeah, so he was diabetic, and to be honest, he wasn't the best with his health. He wasn't the healthiest person, despite the fact older in life, he did a lot of walking, he did a lot of things exercise-wise to do what he could to. But yeah, so he went, that was sort of, I suppose, the beginning of certain issues that were arising. So issues with diabetes. So he lost like 3 of his toes or the end of his foot and things like that. And that obviously really restricted, because he did love walking. Like he would walk from where we lived at Jellicoe Street to the old 4WK when he worked there, which is Fairway. And yeah, he walked everywhere. He was one of those people. So he suffered from diabetes. So that's something I've been really conscious of in my life since I made some lifestyle changes as well, because dad's diabetic, his father's diabetic, and it's hereditary. So, I'm, by the numbers, I'm next in line. So, but yeah, no, so that was, so that was some, so he went through a few different things. But again, like you said, like he went through a lot of these things, but you wouldn't really know about it because he never really talked about it or said much about it. But yeah, there was a number of little health things along the way.
So, James, I mentioned earlier that your mum comes from the Philippines. Have you ever met her parents?
I have, but I was very young. So as I sit here today at 43 years of age, one of the things I certainly want to do in the next few years is go back to the Philippines and go with mum, because getting on council's really brought me closer to my background and has really given me a stronger appreciation of my Filipino heritage. So I've met mum's side of the family, but I was very, very young. So I've been to the Philippines 2 or 3 times, but all before I was 10 years of age. So I really have no recollection of it. So it's something that I certainly want to do. And actually I raised it with mum. Funny story with anyone who knows my mother. I raised it recently with mum. Erin and I have been talking about it. My wife had said to mum, we'd love to go to the Philippines and really nice for you to come with us. And I was like, I would like to go to Hawaii. So we'll see how we go. We might have to go to Hawaii and the Philippines, but yeah, no, I'd certainly want to go back with mum to experience that with her.
Tell me about how your mum and dad met.
So the story goes, Dad used to go on a lot of different tours and trips, and they used to go to Manila. Like they used to have some sort of racing trip, because the racing was with a few other people around that he was friends with at the time, and he met mum over there, and they fell in love with it, and then long distance for a while.
Where did they meet? Do you know?
Don't know. It's a good question.
Oh, James.
Should I see? So they don't. That's what I mean. Like they don't really talk about these sort of things. Yeah, in Manila. That's where mum's from, in Manila. So so they met over there whilst Dad was over there with some other mad Australians.
What do we know about her coming out here, and how did she handle that cultural change?
Yeah, I know. So mum came out here in 1981 around June, and she's often speaks about this, like how cold it was. The Philippines is a pretty hot country, and she's come out to Toowoomba in the middle of June, and it was a massive. And she says, like I spoke before, first thing, Dad was late picking her up from the airport, which is pretty standard, and they went to the state of origin. So yeah, went to the state of origin.
Welcome to Australia.
Yeah, so she met John Cracker McDonald, and then through Joan McDonald, obviously, and they've become lifelong friends and were really helpful for mum along the way. So, but then, it was just adjusting to that whole Australian culture. And that's what I'm saying when I said before, getting on council, and you've experienced this being there in citizenship ceremonies, it only sort of, whatever reason, it really hit me then. Like, imagine this is what your mum did back in 1981. Whereas, as I said, for me, it was normal, because obviously that's how I grew up. So I'm not saying I took it for granted, but that was normal to me. So so she came out and adjusted to all those things, have to learn how to drive, obviously learn all the different culture. And you can imagine she talks about it, it's a big thing. Like, people close to Dad really took her in. As I said, John and Joan McDonald are two to mention, a number of others though. And then she met a lot of people here in Toowoomba, and she's still here, obviously, to this day. This is home to her now. So it's, and we came along, obviously, as part of that journey as well.
So what's the order of the children?
So I'm the oldest, born in 1982, as you mentioned, the year you finished school. Kate is my middle sister. She was in 1984. And then Karen is my youngest sister in 1988. So the three of us, we're all still in Toowoomba. So yeah.
Do you know whether your mother experienced much racism when she moved here? Does she ever talk about that?
She doesn't. It's interesting. Yeah, she doesn't talk about it. And I take that, and maybe naively, I take that as, no, she didn't experience a lot of it, but she probably did. But she just never really led on with it, I suppose. So, but not that I'm aware of.
James, how do you think she handled being the wife? You mentioned that everywhere you went, you were kind of aware that your father was famous. How did she handle that? Like going to those sort of celebrity things and
Yeah, I think she was obviously happy to be with Dad with whatever he was doing. She's another one who certainly never thought she was of some form of celebrity status herself, and even that extends right through to today, where she'll say, "Don't put me on your Facebook," or stuff like this, different things and whatever else and stuff like that. So yeah, so I think that was, and obviously being with Dad was a big part of her life. So she had no interest in football. She had well, obviously wouldn't know what it was, no interest in racing, but she really gained a love for racing and met people through racing. Even to this day, she works at the turf club, so and knows everybody out there, and it's a big part of her life now to be involved with that. So she got involved with that. So she was the same in terms of, I guess, there was no airs or graces about feeling like it was a celebrity status or anything like that.
I know
Yeah.
it's hard as the child when you're looking at your parents' relationship, but what do you think was the glue that kind of held them together?
It's a good question. Probably love. Is that a lame answer?
I think it's a lovely answer.
Yeah, because we, like every family, we had our ups and downs, and everyone goes through that. But I mean, we had mum and dad there with their different strengths individually, and then together. And I think it was just like a love and just more. I don't know. As I said, just the companionship of it as well. And then obviously you add into it the three kids that come along as well. I know they were so proud of all of us, and to see us sort of go through and be able to be who we are today was a big part of it as well. But yeah, I just think they were almost opposites, but it worked. They were able to. I don't want to use the word coexist because it sounds, but like just opposites attract, or just that opposite interests,
Mm.
opposite backgrounds.
What
And
did you
yeah,
what did Cessa's parents do?
when she said she was moving to Australia.
Well, no, before I was
Oh,
that
I
too,
was
but for a living,
Yeah, so
Manila.
like you could imagine, like a lot of those countries, it's pretty tough. So they just did different things around Manila where they were. So whether it was in stores, whether it was through military, as they do a lot, obviously, in those different countries. And then mum's mum was at home with the family. So yeah, it was sort of very small memories of what it's like over there. But, as a kid growing up in Australia and going across there,
Did your
very
mother do a lot of Filipino cooking?
yes and no. She did, but you know me quite well. I'm really, really fussy, so it was sort of lost on me. But everybody that came over to my house always was pretty happy if mum made spring rolls or something else that I didn't actually like. So yeah, she did, and there was a lot of that. And I've actually, as I've got older, probably eat a little bit more of it as opposed to being younger and like, no, I don't like that. I won't eat that.
Say, Sis is serving up spring rolls to your friends and muttering under her breath about you, spoilt little bastard.
Yeah, probably.
So, James, you went to St Mary and you finished school. What did you do then?
So I finished in 1999. I worked at what is now known as Racing Queensland no, I went to uni, sorry. So I went to uni for the first year and I didn't really like it.
What were you studying?
Journalism, ironically. No, I shouldn't say I didn't like it. That's a lie. I just felt it was a slow process to get where I wanted to get. And then an opportunity came up for a traineeship at Queensland Racing for a year. So I was going to take a gap year and just do that because, job, earned my $500 a fortnight. I was rich at 18, 19 years of age. So I learnt a lot out there through racing, as in racing administration. You're a cadet. That's everything from going out and being a cadet steward on a race day on Saturday, going out to Tara or Jandowie or all these places and be a cadet steward, which really was just looking at the brands of horses or packing things up. You're a cadet steward, but then just being involved in racing administration in the office, because I also had an interest in racing. So to be sort of seeing how it works behind the scenes was pretty interesting, actually. So I did that. And then my plan was to go back to uni because I took a year off to do this job because the job was only a year. And I always had these desires around being a journalist. And I was quite, well, he's ambitious, but I mean, as I said before, I just sat there at uni and I looked around the room and I'm like, okay, there's however many of us sitting here. we're all going to finish on the same date and we're all going to try and get the same job. And I know how many jobs are in town. I'm like, there's not many. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and speed up this process. So I went and knocked on doors and said, okay, can I work for free? Can I do a cadetship? Can I do work experience? All of those sort of things. So hoping to get a job there. And then anyway, when I was sort of 3/4 of the way through this traineeship, the opportunity came up at Win TV. And then that's where Dad worked. And that's a whole other story, I'm sure. But yeah, so the chance to work there with Dad was my first, big break in life from a career point of view.
Yeah. What did that job involve?
So I was a sports journalist, so it was just right up my alley, because I was sort of talking about before, because as a kid, you grow up watching the NRL and things like that. I was equally as involved in seeing the local footy because that's what Dad called on the radio. So I'd go to all these games, so I knew a lot about it as well. And and I sort of thought I could wanted to be, I love sport, and for sports journalist sounds like a pretty cool job. So that's what I was doing the sports reporting on different local sports across our area, different local sport, and so that was that job. And so that was where Dad was the sports reader, and I was the journalist. That was a difficult one as well.
Why?
So when I first tried to get a job at Win, I wanted to be a sports journo in Toowoomba because I didn't want to leave Toowoomba. I was very attached to home. Most kids get me out of here. I was the opposite. I wanted to stay here, and I'm still here and don't regret it. And I said, okay, there's one sports job at Win TV in the whole region, because remember, I don't want to leave. And at the Chronicle, they've got about, I think they had 3 sports journos. So I'm like, it's a really narrow,
Shallow
pool. And I never forget just going and seeing him at Win. Hi, I'm keen. I want to do this. I want to do that. And they more or less said to me, and I don't blame them for this either, to be honest, because it makes sense. Look, the hard part for you is it's going to be a bit odd. Look, Pat O'Shea is the guy reading it on the desk, and James O'Shea is the person doing the stories.
So were they worried about the Nepo baby?
Probably, but probably just that, it would just seem a bit odd. But again, Toowoomba being the community that it is, it actually worked. Sort of people sort of saw us as a package deal, and we even MC'd things together, and then I worked on radio together, and all these sorts of things sort of evolved from that. But early on, and as a young man growing up, trying to find my own way, that was one of the bigger challenges, and mentally and learnings within myself, because obviously, there's plenty of that. I got it in council too, I still get it. You're there because of your father's name and all the rest of it. And that's cool. Like, I'm fully at peace with that and understand that and accept that. I know the truth, but the irony being, when I started working at Win, I was like, so you're Pat's son. Oh, no wonder you got the job. Where the irony was, it actually held me back. I missed a couple there, and then I kept at it. And I think at the end of the day, I probably wore them down, I suppose. And they were desperate, or they had to take a chance on something at the time. And I got the job. So I was there from 2000 until 2013 in the end, all the way from sport journal to finishing up there as chief of staff, which was, again, in my home community, working in the station where Dad was, and to be able to work with him every day was just, I wanted to kill him at times I'm always, I'm really organized, So if I'm on air at 6 a.m., if I'm not there by 5:30, 5:40, I'm late. Like, Dad was like a 5:59 kind of guy. So when we worked together, I couldn't handle that. And I'm like, it was, so
Were you at some stage his boss?
Probably, yes. I never thought about it like that. Yeah, I would have at Win, because I was the chief of staff. Yeah, I would have been. Yeah, but I never. Until you've said it now, obviously, I just never really thought of it like
You didn't get
that.
him in and do his performance appraisal and say, "Look, Pat, there's a problem here."
Imagine that. No, I never had to do that. No.
Thanks for tuning in to Big Little Small Talk, or Small Little Big Talk, as our guest James O'Shea likes to call it, and give me a hard time about it every time I see him. But he's telling me about his career, and he's the chief of staff at Win. So what happened then? You were doing that job for 10 years, it seems?
So I was at Win as sports journalist or sports editor, but that's just a fancy title because I was the only one doing it anyway. So you can call yourself whatever you like. But then, like anything, I said I wanted to stay in Toowoomba, but I wanted to expand a little bit. So I crossed over a little bit and did a little bit of news reporting, and it didn't really give me the same sort of buzz as sports. But then as I got through it, they got to a point where there was an opportunity to be chief of staff. And I sort of summed it up at the time and threw my hat in the ring. I just wanted to see change there. And I didn't know if I was the right person, but at the same time, I was like, I just don't want to have to go through more, like if you want to change something, get in there and have a crack and do it yourself rather than sit back and complain or whatever else. And so that was my first opportunity into real leadership where you're in charge of other people, you're responsible for other people. And that was a really good experience. And I met some amazing people. We covered some incredible events. I learned a lot about leadership from an individual, from just being thrust into it and learning how to manage people. We made a lot of mistakes along the way, but it's all those lessons that sort of learned to become who you are. I probably wasn't ready to do the job at the time, but I just told him I was and thought I'll figure it out later. And I was smart enough to have the right people around me that could fill the gaps that I couldn't do. But I knew and felt I could get the best out of people. I really thought I could do that.
You were there for the floods in 2011.
Yeah.
Tell me about
Yes.
some of those experiences.
That's the most incredible event I've ever seen, I've ever covered. You could do a whole podcast on this. There's so many stories with that. But a couple I'll never forget is, so that all happened, as we know. And I remember it starts raining and they said there's a landslip at Mount Kynoch. So we sent a crew up that way and then something else happened here. And then I jumped in a car with Rob Gould. I used to be at council and he was a junior. I said, let's go have a look down here. And we went along and we were at the corner of North Street and Ruthven, sort of where that BP is on the corner. And there was water just flowing everywhere. And like people often say, if it's flooded, forget it. Well, that's one example where seriously the water rose that fast that no one, we got there as we got out and there was a car that was stuck there. There was fridges coming down North Street. There was fridges, there was trailers. There was just that much water. And the most incredible scene that I saw that day, and still one of the most incredible scenes I've ever seen, was there was people stuck in a car. And again, you talk about just good people in our community that just rallied. They saved some people that I don't know, they would have lost their lives. They were trapped in the car and they've helped them get out and the rest of things like that. And then just seeing all of that and then just walking around this city that night, sort of after the water had dropped, you just couldn't picture or imagine how the hell was there water that high through Ruthven Street or through Russell Street, or how the hell did that how is this even possible that this happened? How was there cars and shipping containers floating down the middle of the street? And then you add the element to it, then in the days after, Grantham happened. Let's say the most incredible story I ever covered at went down to a family at Grantham. And none of you might remember this or not, with one of our mayoral achievement medals, I met the family again X amount of years later, and it's my role in council with their grandchild. And anyway, in Grantham, I went down and saw them to do a story the next day, and they told me their story, and it still gives me goosebumps and, makes the hair that I can stand up. But essentially they're in their house, the house is building up. They put all the grandkids onto the table, water keeps rising. So then the grandfather's got the grandkids, they put them up onto the roof, 2 grandkids onto the roof, water's rising, grandma up in the roof, and the grandfather's quite a big guy. He couldn't pull himself up on top of the roof, so he's holding onto the gutter. And then he said, and then here I am hanging onto the gutter as this water's rising, and then I see a brown snake swimming along beside me. So they were quite religious early. So I said a prayer because I thought, well, I'm either going to drown or the snake's going to get me. It's one of the two. But he said the snake just swam straight past me, and then the helicopters, came in and went them to safety. But being with them and listening to them tell that story is something I'll never ever, ever, ever forget. So, and it had a profound effect on so many people. That's an incident. We were at Kitchener Street just after the Rice family got washed away. Sadly, we turned up there and there was people like, someone's been. It was just, you couldn't, you couldn't imagine it.
Yeah. At the same time, James, was it fueling your love for the job or was it burning you out?
At that stage, it was fueling my life. I slept not many hours that week because then Gundy went under. So we drove out to Gundy, and the old story of go out to India and I don't know if we'll get back. Like we will eventually, but if the roads cut, and I remember driving out there because they said the levee out there was going to burst at Gundy. So we were out that way. And then the next, I remember that. I remember that week adrenaline sort of carried us through because, and I say this really, really respectfully because obviously it's a major incident and there's people's lives here. But as a journo, you get the adrenaline of covering big events. Yeah, after it and talking about it now, like the human aspect of it and how, seeing and witnessing and what you felt at the time is pretty harrowing. But adrenaline gets you through. But that week, I reckon I slept, I don't know, not many hours seriously in a week of that peak time when that all sort of happened because, as I said, we were just 24/7, and that's no social media, none of those sort of things. So we're the highest ratings I reckon Wynn would have ever seen.
Now, we could talk about that all day, but I do want to ask you about your love life. So, because you have had one true love,
Yeah,
and that is your wife, Erin.
yeah.
Yeah, and you met when you were how old?
We met, I was 20, must have been 22 or so, and Erin was 19. I should know these sort of things, isn't I? So, what did I say that now? We've been together 21 years. So, what's this year? 25. So what's that? 2004. We met.
And I mentioned James in the intro because I suppose it's so foreign to me having so many kids. You are not having any children. Was that a conscious decision?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. No one's ever asked us about this. So yeah, no, I don't know. I never had the, I don't know, instinct or will or want to have children. So that obviously is a pretty big thing. And I get that. So I'm obviously fortunate that Erin is in that same bracket to an extent. I don't think she's probably as strong as I on that feeling. But
That you were quite adamant that you didn't want to have children.
yeah, but I never sort of said I'm never having children. But I think it was pretty well said that it wasn't something that really, I don't know, and which is weird. I know I didn't have that. I've got nieces and nephews that love them, but
I wouldn't say that it's weird. I think that it's something that probably needs to be talked about more. And the people who say I'm childless by choice,
yeah,
they feel very, almost like they have to apologize for it, I think.
yeah, you're right. So, well, I know people obviously that wish they could and they can't, and that sort of is probably what that comes from, But I mean, I've never had that parental will, want, or instinct, and that still sits to this day. I love, as I said, nieces and nephews. I'd spend every day with them if I could. I'll spend every day with them, then give them back.
Well, I just want to get through a few more things to
Yeah.
ask you about before I have to let you go. Your great passion, and I think you can see the way your face lights up when you talk about it, and you can see when you're doing it, is ring announcing.
Yeah.
How did you start doing that?
So that's yeah, I do. I love it. That's something that essentially I'd never had I had no desire around or any real. Brendan Smith, the local boxing promoter here, who's had come back to Australia and was doing shows, and I got to know him. And anyone knows Brendan, he's very convincing. He sort of said, "Oh, mate, you'd be a great ring announcer." And I said, "I don't know what I'm doing." And he did a show, and I just said, "All right, I'll give it a go." And that was a long time ago now, and now it's sort of, it's delivered me with some really big opportunities. It's delivered me with a lot of disappointments. It's delivered me with a lot of sleepless nights because there's a lot of different travel and stuff and things involved with it. A lot involved in that world, but yeah, it's something. So Dad was a race caller, and people say, "Were you even going to call races?" And I sort of said, "No, it's never really been my thing, but ring announcing might be my version of that." So yeah, so I've been doing it quite a while now, and as I said, I've been pretty lucky with it. Yeah, I do. It's hard to explain. I just love it. Like
What do you love about it? Try and explain it.
particularly on a big fight and a big crowd, I just love the energy that it sort of creates. And my job, I feel like if I've then got to build that hype. So if I do my job well and the crowd's roaring and carrying on, you build the occasion and you play a key role inside of it. So I feed off that adrenaline. Like I famously said, not famously, that sounds very arrogant. I said one day, the first big show I did was the 26th of August, 2020.
today.
5 years ago, the day we were recording this, Tim Zoo, Jeff Horn, and the bloke walked past me and he said, just pretend you're in the RSL at Toowoomba. And I said to him, I said, we don't do them in an RSL in Toowoomba. But anyway, that was their words. So I said, every time I'm in that RSL in Toowoomba, I pretend I'm here. So I'm the reverse. I was like, I picture myself like I'd thrive off the bigger the crowd, the more cameras, the bigger the moment, the more I feel I really thrive. Like I just love it.
Is it because you can feel the shift in energy? And
Absolutely.
you can feel when it's building and
Yep.
and what control you have of that?
Yeah. And I know when you've got a crowd and the worst feeling is being up there and you're sort of building towards the climax and you're like, I can hear myself speak. It's cricket's like I'm not hitting the mark here. But when the crowd comes with you and you can build it and they rise, there's that adrenaline rush that I get from that is, nothing beats it.
I understand it. Can you remember when you made the decision that you were going to run for council?
I had it in the back of my mind for a while. So my first election was 2016. 2012, and working in media as well, you get a good view of the world in regards to that. And you get a pretty good feel of community in terms of what the community's feeling or wanting, or not exactly, but like you're out there talking to people every day and covering different stories and you get a bit of a, so anyway, and I sort of had eyed it off a little bit. I considered it in 2012, but I just didn't feel I was mature enough or in a position enough to contribute. Fast forward 4 years and I added a bit more experience to my belt. I spent 12 months working as a media advisor when I left Win for Ian McFarlane, the federal member for Groom at the time when he was cabinet minister. So I got to experience a little bit of behind the scenes of politics, I suppose. So that was all a part of my learning and seeing, okay, do I feel like I want to do this? And then obviously we get to 2016 and I decided to say this is the right time, the right moment. We've spoken about it a bit, but obviously I didn't have my biggest supporter or the person I would love to have had his opinion the most. But obviously, because it was 6 months or so after Dad had passed, so I didn't have that opportunity. But I was set on it. It was just when. And 2016 was it. And you were there. I was really lucky. It was an experience.
I don't know whether it was luck, James, but I was going to ask you about your greatest achievement and your greatest frustration, but actually I don't want to know about that. I want to know about your very philosophical side. Your everyday, almost, you post a little saying or a proverb or something. Yeah, not a proverb, but where does that come from?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a part of I think of the growth of what makes me tick as a human. So I spoke about sort of around 2015. Dad passed away in 2015, and a close friend of mine, Braden Smith, passed away in the same year. He was 23. Most people probably know the story of Braden Smith, the young boxer who passed away at a boxing event here. So growing up, I never dealt with tragedy. As an adult, I was certain. But basically what it did, and I never encourage anyone to have to go through it to get this perspective, but losing Dad and losing Braden in the space of 6 months gave me a perspective of what's important in life. So I used to sweat a lot of the small stuff. I really mellowed in terms of knowing what's important in life. And the most important thing in life for me was obviously came down to family, came down to my own personal health and looking after myself. You've commented many times that I've looked different back in some of the photos you've seen what I look like. So it changed my whole perspective and really got myself to have a good look at myself and my life and who I was. So I've become quite calm and that message. So every day I need to wake up, I should say every day, the plan is every day. Every day I wake up really early. Rain, hail, shine, hot, cold. I like to go out and feel the air or the cool or the sun or whatever it might be. People often see, probably I'll post those photos of where I'm up in the morning and then I come back and I've got 2 books. They're both by an author called Dominic Bertolucci. So basically I just open it at a random page every day. So I'll read that page and then that's sort of that whole mental set of, okay, so that sets the tone for my mindset for the day. So because I'm a really positive human, that's my thing. So that just sort of my little routine to then go and handle good, bad, indifferent for the day. So it's just a personal thing. And yeah, as I said, I'm just big on my own, I suppose, just doing what I can for my own self, for my own mental health, my own approach, just calmness.
Do you know what I love about you is you're really into your clothes. I really love your fashion
Yeah.
and your
Yeah.
style.
Yeah, that's I don't know where I don't know where that's come from, to be honest, but
You
yeah.
don't think it's Pat?
No, absolutely not. Not at no. God, no, 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 no. Oh God, no, no, not at all. That's a hard no. No, I don't know. Yeah, I just have as I've got older, and I just sort of yeah, I've got a if I like something, I've got a lot of it. You know, just
How many pairs of shoes have you got?
oh,
You better not say it.
30 odd. Oh, that's 30 odd. Yeah, and then even another. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And you keep yourself busy with a couple of shows,
Yep.
Racing Nation and the Semi Pros. What are they?
Yeah, so that again, his name's come up a lot in this, obviously, but Dad, obviously, you spoke about before, did radio programs for a very, very long period of time. So I had the great fortune of working with him. And then when he was away or ill, I filled in for him. And then when he passed, it was really important for me to keep that legacy going. I've sort of evolved it a little bit into the modern era, which I sort of laugh about at times because Dad was that era. It's on the wireless, but I've evolved it into podcasts and stuff. And I could just imagine Dad when I'm saying, oh, it's online now, or it's on a podcast, or that would be completely foreign to him. But ultimately, I do it because it's a legacy to him.
Mm.
And it's even a drawback as well to this relates to ring announcing as well. Even today, when you put this mic on me, every time I put a mic on, I think of him. There's something about that's just that a connection that I feel with him when anytime I've got a mic. So I'll walk in a boxing ring, I'll walk in it, I always do a circle of the ring, and I stop and I look up and then I go. Like it's just a set thing, and anytime I got a mic, I think of.
It's ritual.
So it's a legacy thing.
That's lovely that I made you think of your dad. I like that
Yeah.
thought. Just one other quick thing, and you just reminded me then as you did it, because you're just the funniest mimic. Can you do a sort of a impersonation of your father?
No,
Okay. Well,
I
what
don't
about
think I can. No, he was
if you're talking to your sisters and you say, "Remember when Dad used to say?"
oh, not really. No, I don't. Like I've honestly that's a good question. I should do that.
Okay. Well, what about one of our former colleague Paul Antonio? Can you do in a score?
Is he going to listen to this?
I think so. Yeah. He's a big fan of Big Little Small.
Yeah, he is. He is. Yeah. So, you and I have been around him. Then what? They say, well, we're on a journey. Well, we'll put it on the table. It's just, yeah. It's funny, man. I do, yeah, like picking up certain things that people would say or how they sort of speak, but I can't do Dad. That's one I can't.
Too close to the heart.
Oh,
Now we're running into minus time now, James. My
yeah,
second last question I always ask everyone is, do you have a favourite royal?
yeah, I do. William,
Okay.
for a very unroyal reason. Did you know that William and I are twins?
Oh,
21st of June, 1982. We're the same age, same birthday, identical.
there you go.
Not in looks, obviously, well, obviously we're not really twins, but yeah, we're born on the same. I share the same day.
The brother from another mother.
So myself and William, we're the
I love it.
so we are we're same day, same age, 21st of the 6th, 1982. Same year you finished school. We are
There I was proudly at Nambour High School,
So-
struggling with going surfing at lunchtime.
But that's the only reason. But yeah, is William. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. What's the song that can't keep you off the dance
Now,
floor?
none. I'm not a dance floor guy. And in any circumstances, even like our wedding when we had to dance, we had lessons and it was not good. So anyway, I'm not a dance floor kind of dude, but probably surprised me. I've got varying different tastes in music. But if it's a favorite song, let's just say if there was, and it's California Love by Dr. Dre and Tupac. Do you know that song?
Well, I can't say I do, but I'm sure it's there in the musical library somewhere.
Or a good one from my childhood was a song called James. Hold the Ladder Steady, James. That from the 60s, someone sang it. So my parents played it to me when I was a kid.
Oh, how beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's a really lovely way to finish off.
Big, little, small talk with Megan O'Hara Sullivan.
Oh, well done. James O'Shea, it has just been a delight speaking to you today. Thank you for sharing your story with me and being my guest on Big Little Small Talk.
Thank you for having me. I know you had one of your other questions said you might ask me is what made me smile today. and it was seeing you.
Ah,
Truthfully.
He's all charm, folks. That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.
You've been listening to a 102.7 FM Toowoomba original podcast. For more podcasts or to listen to live and local Toowoomba radio, please visit 1027.com.au or download the Community Radio Plus app.